Okay, hello folks. This is a short video of how to program and use xplane11. The first thing I want to show you is just briefly is the xplane installer. If you go into the folder of xplane, there will be two files. One starts the program itself, and this one here, it's called xplane installer. Double click on that, and that'll start up the installer. And that will allow you to add and remove scenery. Just wanted to show you that. So if you're not seeing something, usually xplane will let you know that you're not going to see, you're only going to see water. And if that's the case, you're missing scenery of the world, you know. So I've got most of North and South America downloaded, and then a little bit of Europe, and then most of the ocean, you know, Pacific and islands and stuff like that. So anyway, that just wanted to show you that briefly. That's where you do that. That's before you start the program itself. It's called the xplane installer. So you can change things there, update scenery, add or remove scenery, and this goes online. And the same with the update xplane. Usually it'll prompt you automatically if it needs an update. You know, or if there's a new update, it'll prompt you and let you know. Anyway, so we'll close that. And then let's go into the program. I'm going to start it up here. I've got an icon here, or you can start it in the same folder, the xplane folder. Just look for the big X here. That's the actual program. So I'm going to just use the link that I made here. Double click on that. And I'm going to stop the video while it's loading here, because it takes a little while. It's got to load and check all the scenery and stuff like that. So I'll stop it right there for a second. Okay, now that the program is loaded, now you can go to settings right here. I'll show you that, just some quick settings if you're going to set up a joystick, which is preferred. So I'll click on that, and here I have a it's called a Logitech Extreme 3D Pro. It's like a $50 joystick. It's pretty cheap. It's got rudder control with twisting the handle. But anyway, all the buttons that you see here, now watch what happens when I unplug it from the computer. It's a USB connection. If I unplug it, now it doesn't see, if you don't see anything as far as a joystick connected, it's because it's probably unplugged. And I can hit OK here, and so there's nothing to see there, but as soon as I plug it in, it'll recognize that it's the Logitech joystick. And most of your devices, there's drivers for it, and it'll immediately recognize what kind it is. You know, there's only so many out there anyway. Anyway, this is where you set it up, and you can calibrate it. Right over here, you see the pitch and yaw. As I move my pitch up and down, you see it responding there, and you should see a nice clean signal, you know, with the dot in the middle like that. Same with the roll. Move it back, make sure the roll's going right direction, back and forth, and then centers. And you see the yaw there flickering? I've got a bad potentiometer. It's getting dirty, and this is a really old joystick that I've used for many years. It still works, but the pot is a little dirty. That's why it acts up like that. And then the throttle. You notice the throttle is a little bit backwards, right? That's all the way idle. This is full power. So that's backwards. That's fine. If you find it's not acting right, you can reverse it. As you can see here, the little reverse thing here. Okay, moving on. And what you do is you go up here on the side, there's a little scroll bar, and you can scroll this thing down. And now I've got all these numbered buttons are associated with what it does here, like this hat switch for views. I can, go down and you'll see it react as I move toggle that hat switch around. The different buttons, you'll see them like button 4 would be, well, that's the hat switch. And then as I scroll down, you got to grab the scroll bar here and scroll down. Now you see I've got set up pitch, trim. That's what I like. I like pitch trim. There's pitch trim up and down, and then flaps up and down, and then toggle thrust reversers. It's another button on here if you're flying a jet. And I like the toggle functions. Toggle speed brakes. That way you hit it once, it reverse thrust. Hit it again, it goes to forward thrust. And same with the speed brakes. It's either deploy them or not. Keeps it simple. For the Cessna, you wouldn't need a lot of those, but I fly different airplanes besides the Cessna. Anyway, so I've got the views that I like. Like chase is button 12 down here. And ride along. Those are external views. So some of these buttons that are down on the bottom I use for views. The when I pull the gun switch or whatever you want to call it there, that's button number 5. That would be the brakes. I like that, the brakes being there. So I like the trim like they normally would be on the top of a joystick. And then I also like the brakes being right there on the trigger. So since I don't have rudder pedals, but it works really nice. So anyway, that's how you set up your joystick, and you can change all these. You can just hit edit, on the side, if you want to change the function of whatever you want your joystick to do it. So it's all customized. Okay, so we're done with that. I'm gonna hit done here. I'm not gonna. So now, back to settings again. So you could do all this before you even start a flight. So back to general. I'll just go through this real quickly. These are basic setups. Course language, warnings. A lot of this stuff is just self-explanatory, and I just use the default setting for the most part. There is one button here, use experimental flight model, requires aircraft reload. You could try that. Apparently it's supposed to work better for you get realistic spins, in stalls. So try it. If you don't like it, just, you can always deselect it later. It's no big deal. Simulate blackout, redout, I leave that off because sometimes I play around. I take the airplane up to 200,000 feet or something like that, and I don't want to black out. I mean, you can add oxygen, but it just gets in the way as far as I'm concerned. But if you want realistic, when you're pulling too many G's or negative G's, you'll red out or black out. And if you go above 15,000 feet, you'll start getting hypoxia, which the screen will just start going black. So keep that in mind. If you don't want to get annoyed by some of this stuff, just shut it off. And then there again, you scroll from the right. You can scroll down. You'll see other options here. And here's one option you can click so people can't change your settings. So a kid comes along and starts messing with stuff, you can hit this and lock him out. Basically, it puts like a safety on the settings. Anyway, I removed this one too. Remove flying surfaces when over speed or G limits. If you want it realistic, you can click on it, or if you don't want to be bothered by it, just don't click on it. Okay, so that's and then sound settings. I just leave all the sound all the way up. Every sound I like having the sound of the wind and whatever. And engines and stuff like that. X-Plane's ATC, I don't use it because I don't think it works as good as actually Flight Sim's ATC model works a lot better. You could try it. I don't really use it. And then graphics. There again, when you install the program, it's gonna it'll automatically see what kind of graphics card you have and what your capability is, and it'll probably do a default setting, and that's where I left it. I kind of left the default setting, so you can mess with it a little bit. I would just do one thing at a time and try it. And then you got field of view. It's kind of, if you're a camera buff, you probably know what that is, and I just leave it the default settings and keep it simple. And usually the default settings are pretty good, and it runs pretty good on my machine. Network, if you're going to hook a iPad and use ForeFlight or some other EFB, electronic flight bag, I use ForeFlight, and ForeFlight works really nice with X-Plane. There's some other ones that work with X-Plane. They've got it built into the app, to be able to see the difference between a real airplane and your simulator. So it works pretty good. Really adds a lot of realism. So you can set up that in this network part here. This data output, I really don't know what this is. You probably have to read the manual. I think it's more for people that are really heavy into the flight simming and developers, developing something for the flight sim. And joystick, we already did. Keyboard, same thing. You can go over each button on your keyboard. I use some of the keyboard buttons. If you go to Essentials, it'll show you which key does what. F. Of course, I have a throttle on my joystick, so I don't need F1 and F2 is throttle up, throttle down. Trim, same thing. There's buttons on the keyboard you can use for trim. All sorts of other things. Views. I do use some of the keyboards for views. W is like the default forward view. If you, I don't know if it shows it here. It should though. But you can go through that or go to all and then basically look at everything that you'd want to control with your keyboard. You can go through and see where it's set. Usually the default settings are pretty good, and it just takes a little time to go through it and learn which button does what. But I try to keep most of my controls on the joystick and maybe just a couple on the keyboard just to make it simple to fly. Some of this other stuff here, GPS hardware, that's if you actually want to use some of your equipment from your airplane. A lot of people have portable GPSs that they want to hook up and use it in conjunction with their simulator. They can do that. VR, I don't use it. You can get some virtual reality goggles and hook up to. I haven't tried it. I don't know how it would work. And the little VR that I've done, it makes me sick. I get motion sickness from them, so I stopped using those. So let's go back to main menu, and then let's go load a flight here. I'm going to hit just new flight, and then it shows all the airplanes. It comes with a lot of different airplanes. Some of the ones I like the ultralight because it's simple and it's and it's very realistic for an ultralight. If you're into that sort of thing, it's got a float plane, Cessna. It's got a helicopter. Helicopter's pretty challenging, and I believe it's realistic, even though I haven't flown a helicopter. If you want to shoot an approach from orbit down to final with the shuttle, you can do that. Though it doesn't have an engine, so you drop it at like a couple 100,000 feet or something, and then you can try and make it to the runway. See if you can make it to the runway. It's pretty cool. The tail dragger works pretty good. I like this one here. It's very realistic. You can lock the tail wheel. There's ways of locking the tail wheel so it's easier to take off and land with it. And then I don't know if that's you can really do that with that airplane. I doubt it. But I know DC-3s you could lock the tail wheel, so it makes it easier to control on the ground. Anyway, the one I use for most of the time, because I fly a Cessna 172, I use this one here, so we'll start that one up. And the weather over here, a simple setup for, you can have it set for real-time weather. So if you go to Customize, configure it down here on the lower left for match world conditions. And so it'll just go to the internet and get the actual weather that's your station that you're flying from. So say done there. Same with the time. You can customize it, or you can track the real time. So you can, if it's raining out or foggy or whatever's happening outdoors right now, it'll match that. And it does a pretty good job of doing that. So that's a quick way to set that. As far as setting your location, if okay, say I want to go to Minneapolis, I'll put in MSP. Did I get that? Oh, I'll put an extra P in there. Anyway, it'll find it right away. And you click on that, and then you can customize the actual location at MSP. You can go to Customize and put yourself at a gate. It's got several gates you can put yourself at MSP, or at the Humphrey terminal here. Also, Terminal 2, you could set yourself there. So I'll just do that and confirm it. And then as far as the airplane customizations, you can, this is where it's critical, and you can play with this also. Fly the thing around with no fuel and no, the balance and the weight and balance is a very critical thing when you're flying. So, if you really want to fly high performance, you'd lower this weight all the way down, maybe put, just a little fuel in there. So now you can see the total weight of the airplanes like that. I'd recommend leaving the center of gravity where it's, it's at the center, basically. But you can experiment with way aft center of gravity like this here, and you'll see it'll definitely your airplane will probably just fall on its tail, and then when you go to take off, it'll just wallow like crazy, and that's realistic. It's very realistic if you go way far aft CG, which is very dangerous. And you can experiment with way forward CG, and in some cases you may not be able to lift it off the runway. It may not be able to have enough elevator authority to lift it off the runway. So play with that if you want, or just leave it at 0 and get used to flying the machine first. But if you really want to experiment with what happens if you get your CG way out or your weight, look at the weight here. I can max out my fuel, and then watch the weight here. Typically these airplanes, the max gross weight is like, what is it for a Cessna? About 2,400. Well, here in this case it's like 2,500. But look at this, how far you can go past. At that weight, unless you've got a high density altitude, you're probably not even going to get off the ground. It just doesn't have enough power. You'll need like a 10-mile runway, and it still might not get off the ground. So play with it if you like. Find a long runway and see how heavy you can get it and get it off the ground. But typically you want to keep this thing, under the gross weight. But fly around with the gross weight too. That's a good way to practice and learn, how it changes your landing speed and all that stuff. So that's a fun way to check things out. And, experiment with weight and balance. Very critical for airplanes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we'll just jump into the flight here. Failures also, and right here. You can set up failures to happen at a certain time, certain frequency or whatever. I just leave them off, If you want to play with that, you can. No big deal. And then we'll start the flight. I'm going to stop it right here for now, and we'll wait till it loads. Okay, now I've started up the Cessna. We're back at Humphrey Terminal in Minneapolis at nighttime. I'm going to probably change that just to make it simple. But I just want to show you this is the normal 3D view, and here I'm using my mouse to control the view and using the scroll button to zoom in. And this Garmin 530 is pretty realistic. You can program it, and I think even fly I think I'm putting in a lot of waypoints, so you can fly IFR routes with it and stuff like that, and I think it's pretty realistic. Even though I don't own one, I don't have anything like that in my airplane, I think it looks like it's pretty realistic. Anyway, I'm going to change the comms. Well, he's not talking now anyway, so I'll just leave it alone. But anyway, so I'm just scrolling with my mouse, and you can see I'm zooming in and out, looking around. It's a little jerky because my computer probably isn't as fast as it should be. I normally just, if I'm flying, I use a simulator for practicing instrument scanning techniques, basically flying IFR. Even though I'm not instrument rated, I just like to practice in case I do get stuck in the clouds or something. I think it's most useful for that. And anyway, so same thing. If you want to adjust something like your altimeter, you see the arrow there. You can move it back and forth, with your mouse buttons. Just click on the left mouse button. That's how I control most of the stuff. And if you're flying IFR, you can just put the autopilot on, and then it's easier just to manage the airplane. But for beginners, you're going to want to just fly VFR anyway, and fly by reference to your, the outside reference. But you can also use a keyboard for your views. I think it's Q. Q moves it left. And then there again, you can set this up in settings. And then that's E, moves it back. There again, you can use your hat switch if you got a joystick. It does the same thing, left and right, up and down. Same as your mouse. So there's way different ways of moving this. And then go to external view, and you'll see same thing. You can move everything around with your mouse. And what I'm going to do is, there's a pushback function in this. I'm going to turn that down so you can hear me. there's a pushback function, but you don't really need it for the Cessna. You can just I release my brake with the switch, the trigger switch, and then I'm just going to turn it around here, hold the brake, add a little throttle, try not to hit nothing, and then here I am at I say, and then I'm using the joystick cat switch again. It's kind of dark out. But yeah, it's fun to fly at night too. The city, Minneapolis, lights up pretty good. I mean, and you can go all over the world, Seattle, whatever, the airports that you prefer. And so yeah, I just want to show you some of the funny things. Now, as far as flying it goes, it's just like any other airplane. I'm going to go back in the cockpit by hitting W again. It takes me back to my default view here. But you see the controls here are normal Cessna controls, throttle. Your mixture here, I normally just leave it all rich, and I fly at low altitude, so I don't mess with the mixture, you know. And you got your magnetos here. These switches are hard to get at. Just simply click right here, it gets rid of the yoke. You don't, you know, it's just the yoke is for realism. I guess you can watch it there, but you got your avionic switches, and then your pitot heat. If you're flying in bad weather, you probably want to turn that on, you know, and especially in the wintertime. You get the icing, but everything works normally. Like I say, if you want to spend the time to program your Garmin, go ahead. I use the ForeFlight, so I do all my navigating via ForeFlight. Works really good. I don't even bother. I'll maybe occasionally glance at this. But if you want to shoot approaches, all the VOR and the ILS will work. You know, I think the Garmin has some approach capability. I don't know how much because these are older Garmin's. You can also fly a newer glass panel Cessna, but I don't like that. Anyway, I just want to show you some of the same menus that you have access to, like your views. You can select views. Here's sunglasses if the sun's hitting you, and there is an oxygen mask too if you happen to click on that feature of losing oxygen above 15,000 feet. You can click on that and it'll put your mask on. And then you've got toggle replay mode. After you've done a landing, you can click on that and you can analyze your landing, and that's what I would use it for. And then same thing, you've got all sorts of different menus to get to different places. But one thing that helps with this program, I'm gonna switch my settings here again, and I'm going to switch to clear skies. I'm going to go to daytime, and we'll apply the changes just so you can see. Now it's daytime out. And then I'm going to go to map view. This is where you can kind of set yourself at different levels. So if I look at my map view, here's Minneapolis. That's me, the red plane there. There's a F4 flying around. It has some traffic, but not much. You can add more or subtract of it. I don't think it works as good. The AI, artificial intelligent traffic, doesn't work as good as like Flight Sim. Is just much better as far as that's concerned. But X-Plane, I think overall it's a better simulation for the flight training end of it. Yeah, Flight Sim's pretty good too, but I think X-Plane's probably a little better in respect for realism. And anyway, so here's one thing that, how do you put yourself at a different altitude or a different approach? So if I select approach down here for Minneapolis, let's find, KMSP. If I put myself at, how about 35 or 35 ILS, if I put that on there, so now it shows the path. And then now I can pick up my airplane and move it, I believe. Thought I could anyway. Anyway, I don't know if I got to click on something else. There's a way to move yourself to that position. Or let's hit pause here once. Pause it. Maybe I got to. Oh, here I got to click on it and let it changes color. Now I can change my heading. You see the little airplane moving around there? Let's try to move this out here so you can see it there. But you can change the heading of the airplane, so I'll line up with the runway. And then I should be able to move it. Oh yeah, there I go. So you notice how I moved it out here? I'll put it out at about a 2-mile final. You can see it down here also. And then I want to raise the altitude. So there again, you got to scroll. Remember, there's a scroll on the side there. So if I want to change my altitude now, I want to put it up on the flight path right there. And then I also want to speed it up to the landing speed. So I'll put it at 80 knots. I got there's no flaps right now. So once I've got that set, now I can close that. Well, I got to hit pause it, close it. Now I'm on final for that runway. Well, I'm off a little bit here, but you can see the runway out there. I'll add throttle because I'm kind of low. It's more of it's like a 3-degree approach. A lot of them, it's just a standard ILS approach anyway. But anyway, that's how you set yourself up. You don't have to fly around. You can keep on, just hit map if you want to. Hit pause, and then hit map, and you can put yourself wherever you want. And here's something that's kind of interesting. So people wonder, how do you fly the glider? Well, you can just do the same thing. Just put the glider at a certain altitude and speed and heading. But also, if you're going to fly the shuttle, you probably want to change your altitude to something much higher. So watch what happens. I go up into space here. I'm at 195,000 feet. I'll drop it right here. And, there we are. And I'll hit the pause button again. And you see my airspeed went to 0, of course, because there's no air up here, or very little air. And the engine stopped. And the airplane's not going to fly that good. So here I'm trying to move the surfaces, but nothing happens because there's no air up here. You need reaction control jets to control your flight. So this is like kind of if you want to simulate. Well, we do have I think it's an X-15, whatever that. Yeah, you can take that up to this altitude, and the X-15 should respond because it has reaction controls. But if you watch your altitude here now, I'll go back in the cockpit. As soon as I get, this is where I'd black out also because there's no oxygen at this altitude. But you can see Nokomis and Harriet, and Calhoun. There's Lake Minnetonka. We're at 150,000 feet. But you can see the altitude is winding down. Anyway, that's just something fun to do. That's how you place your airplane. Remember, map. That's how you change map modes. And you can also get the settings from this point and such. But anyway, that's just a brief explanation of how X-Plane kind of operates. And then let me pause it here once. I see my engine started up, so apparently I must have got enough oxygen now to start the motor. Let's pause it once here. I just want to go outside. Here's an external view again. And if you look around, you can see, yeah, we're above most of the atmosphere. And there you can see the sun. And I think the smoke is my engine. It's a condensation from the engine, at this extreme altitude. But kind of neat. Remember, if you don't have the detail of the whole, if you're up high and you don't have the whole detail of the continents, all you're going to see is water. So just keep that in mind. So I'll end it there. I think you guys get the idea of setting it up and some of the ways of navigating it and putting yourself in the right position to shoot your approach or whatever you want to do. So I'll end it there. Talk to you later. Bye.